In the mid-19th century, tens of thousands of British, Welsh and Scandinavians crowded the docks at Liverpool to take a one-way ocean voyage to America. These immigrants dreamed of a new life, a new beginning. Nearly 2,000 of them were believers in a religion born on American soil. They boarded vessels in the spring and summer of 1856, bound for what they considered the promised land. For the most part, these religious emigrants were poor. They would pull wooden handcarts loaded with only what they needed to survive as they crossed the Great Plains and the Rockies. Their hopes were set not on jobs, adventure, or business, but on gathering with their fellow faithful to worship the Almighty God. So it was, with what they termed the fire of Israel's God burning in their hearts, that they began their passage from this bustling British seaport to the American West, to a place they called Zion.
My parents, relatives and friends did all in their power to keep me from coming to America. But I had the spirit of gathering, and the Lord opened my way with the Handcart Company. Susanna Stone, Ship Thornton, 1856.
Monday, bid farewell to President Franklin D. Richards, who said, "God bless you, Brother Blake, and give you power, and cause all your efforts to prosper." James G. Blake, Ship Horizon, May 25th, 1856.
The settlement of the frontiers of the American West is a story of explorers, trappers, miners, and settlers who crossed the heartland of America by the thousands to realize their dreams. By 1856, more than 40,000 Mormon converts had made the pilgrimage to settle in the Utah Territory.
When the Lord calls the saints to do anything, if they will rely upon Him and do the best they can, He will fit the back to the burden and make everything bend to the accomplishments of His purposes. John Jakes, Liverpool.
The Mormon experience as far as religiously is this idea of gathering. There was this idea of both a spiritual and a physical renewal of their lives. I mean, it was an idea of opportunity and expectation.
Church President Brigham Young had established a revolving fund to finance the ongoing exodus of the faithful.
For those who couldn't afford to pay their own way, there was the Perpetual Immigrating Fund that was launched in the fall of 1849. It was very successful. About 30,000 of the 90,000 Latter-day Saints that came in the 19th century were assisted by this fund.
Those who emigrated with the help of this revolving fund were expected to pay back the money as soon as they could, so that others might be assisted. Time and demand strained the coffers.
We cannot afford to purchase wagons and teams as in times past. Make handcarts, and let the immigration foot it. Brigham Young.
The Lord promised through His servant Brigham Young that the handcart companies shall be blessed with health and strength, and will be met part way with teams and provisions from the valley. Those who go by handcarts and continue faithful and obedient will be blessed more than they have ever dreamed of. When they get to Zion, there will be better saints every way than when they started. John Jakes, Liverpool.
The gathering poor, if they are faithful, have a right to feel that the favor of God, angels, and holy men is enlisted in their behalf. Franklin D. Richards, Liverpool.
Franklin D. Richards was the president of the British Mission for the Mormon Church, and one of his responsibilities was to do all of the planning and organizing for this gathering. When he encouraged this huge number of people to immigrate in 1856 was perhaps overly optimistic. He had a chance to know the people of the British Isles very intimately, and he knew their conditions. So for him, this was a wonderful thing that these poor people, some of which had been waiting 19 years, 18 years to go to Zion, were finally going to have their chance.
There was very little here to keep them. Life was hard, life was short, and therefore there was no opportunity for them. So when people talked about going on a great trek, it fired the imagination of these people. They believed that whether they made it or not, they'd be saved in heaven.
Thomas Tennant, Esquire, paid my way. Henry Hamilton, Scotland.
To travel the whole voyage at the cost of about £20 from Liverpool to the Salt Lake Valley, that would represent more than a year's salary for an individual.
The brethren and sisters congregated upon the decks and made the air vocal with their songs of praise and joy to the Lord their God for the deliverance from Babylon. John Jakes, Ship Horizon.
For 6 weeks the emigrants faced sea swells and headwinds, fog, cold and some sunny days. Most everyone was seasick. They were organized into companies and maintained rules of cleanliness, health and good order.
These different cultures of, say, the British and the Scandinavians had an opportunity in crossing the ocean for 5 or 6 weeks to be carefully intertwined together to form this rope that would literally help pull them to Zion.
In all its history, the American West never saw a more unlikely band of pioneers. Most of them, until they were herded from their crowded immigrant ship, had never pitched a tent, slept on the ground, cooked outdoors, built a campfire. They had not even the rudimentary skills that make frontiersmen. Wallace Stegner.
This was an experiment. This handcart business was an experiment. First year it had ever been tried.
Lots of people walked west, but no one ever had done an organized, outfitted handcart trek across to the west.
There were 5 handcart companies in 1856. The first 3 companies arrived at Iowa City at the end of March and mid-April.
The first shiploads of immigrants that were using the handcart plan got to Iowa City. They just had to wait. Nothing was ready for them. And so any of the craftsmen that came across on these ships were immediately put to work in building handcarts.
Completing construction of so many handcarts stalled the immigrants getting out on the trail. They finally left in June and arrived in the valley without serious incident late September and early October. The residents welcomed their fellow saints with parades and celebrations. But the last 2 companies, captained by James G. Willie and Edward Martin, were not so fortunate. They sailed late from Liverpool. Mormon emigration officials lost precious time making arrangements and securing passage for the travelers.
They really didn't have the money to finance, and trying to wait and get that money and make it all happen caused enormous delays, which sent the people out from England as much as 2 months later than they should have left.
I think you have a combination of people that had zeal with not a great deal of knowledge, but certainly had right motives in wanting to come.
July 24th. We have travelled upwards of 1,700 miles by railway to this place. For the last fortnight, we have been living in a tent. James Blake, Iowa City.
The 3 handcart companies ahead of them had depleted supplies of seasoned lumber in Iowa City, as had the building boom in the community.
We expected to find these handcart vehicles already at hand on our arrival at Iowa City. Elizabeth Horrocks Jackson.
Precious weeks passed before the handcarts and tents were completed. The first leg of the journey, 277 miles from Iowa City to Florence, Nebraska, took 4 weeks. Willie's company arrived August the 11th. Martin's on the 22nd. A few who had been to the valley were wary of travel so late in the season and urged wintering in Nebraska.
We cannot cross the mountains with a mixed company of aged